Hi, and welcome to this episode of Filmi Ladies. I am Pitu, and this is my friend and co-host Beth. And today we are going to talk about Waheeda Rehman. This is part of our series that we're doing on actresses of the yesteryears. We started off with Nargis, and now we've moved to Waheeda, who's one of our absolute favorites. Last week, I remember Beth, Amrita, and I were talking about how we can't be friends with someone if they don't like Waheeda. Because that is the power of Waheeda. She was amazing. She was a woman of great acting, great dancing, great social skills, great personality, very, very natural. Really one of the most perfect actresses to have come out of Bollywood. And the movie that I'm reviewing of hers today is Guide. And Beth is going to review, I think, Kohraa and CID. So let me ask you this, Beth. What did you think of the two movies that you saw first?
Well, okay, so CID, she's she's not quite, she's maybe like a secondary character, and it's her first Hindi film. And there were actually moments where I was like, I think that's her. Like I almost didn't recognize her. She looks very different somehow. She seems, she plays have you seen it?
I think I've seen it a really long time ago. Did she play like a prostitute or something in it?
She's a gangster's girlfriend, basically. She's a mom.
Okay, so she's a mom.
But she's also an orphan whom he's rescued. So she's clearly a very kept woman.
Right.
It's a very abusive relationship. And she's not so when I had read that she plays a mall, I was like, oh, I was expecting someone kind of like feisty and gritty and smoky.
Yeah.
She's not like that at all. She's not meek. She's much more kind of
demure.
Like smooth and elegant rather than prickly and juicy. But I still liked it. And then Kohraa, she's superb, but she is encumbered by Biswajit because he is
anyone would be encumbered by Biswajit.
Yeah. That movie is super duper, and I'll talk about it at length whenever we're ready. But she is phenomenal, and you should definitely watch it for her if you haven't seen it. And you can just kind of ignore him, but you do wish that he wasn't there because everything else is great. If you took him out, it would be better. But he doesn't really get in the way. So I shouldn't say she's encumbered. He could be better, and she is phenomenal.
Okay. Right. There are those movies where you see these pairings and you were like, what were you thinking during casting? Like there's a movie, I can't remember the name, but it has Madhubala, and she's cast opposite that guy from Baiju Bawra. What's his name? Bharat Bhushan. Oh Lord, it is a travesty and it is a tragedy. And there is a song in that movie. I've seen this movie, but I blocked it out because it was so traumatic. There's a song in this movie where Madhubala, like Bharat Bhushan is upset with her. So Madhubala is going throughout this song, basically trying to like say sorry to him and, seduce him and stuff like that. I know, it's Madhubala. And she's trying to seduce Bharat Bhushan. And I watched this movie when I was really little. It came on Doordarshan, which was like the national TV channel when I was little. And I was watching it. And even I, at the age of like 8 or 9, was like, there is something wrong with this picture. This is very weird. So it's just one of those.
I think this is going to be a theme of this series. These remarkable women being partnered with men who are less than they are to varying degrees. And it sounds like Bharat Bhushan and Biswajit being some of the bigger gaps that we'll probably encounter. Like in our Earthing Crushes episode, you already talked about Sri Devi being opposite someone who was terrible. So like, this is a theme for women.
This is definitely a theme. Well, I mean, even Guide to some extent, which is one of my favorite movies. I've seen it numerous times. I've read the book that it's based on, The Guide by R.K. Narayan. Great book as well. But it's like, now I typically tend to be neutral on Dev Anand. I don't think he's quite as terrible as people think he is, but I also don't think he is anything remotely charming or cute. I find him very affected and annoying, and he does all these weird like things where I'm like, can you just stand straight? Like just for 2 seconds, just stand straight and give a normal dialogue. He also, I think at some point in his career, I don't know when, someone told him that speaking super rapid fire in a dialogue was like cute. So he does that a lot. And you can tell that that's also an artistic choice. It's not like he talks like that normally, but he feels like he has to give this dramatic like soliloquy and that it's going to be awesome. And I'm like, no, again, just give a normal dialogue and just stand up straight and say, just can you not with all the airs and the graces and the fripperies? And it's particularly annoying to me in Guide because even though he's on the whole done decent job, I would say, Waheeda is just so natural and perfect and on note that he just comes across as annoying because she's so good. So it's kind of like the actress is doing such a good job. Could you please maybe try to do better? But I think in his head, he was this like gigantic superstar who did not need improvement. But that was also something that annoyed me about Guide as well.
Yeah. To me, his black and white films, I find him much more enjoyable than color films. And I'm sure it's just at where he was in his career. I'm not saying it's inherent to color cinema, but I actually tweeted while watching CID, oh, okay, I get him now. This is the first one.
Okay.
I've liked him in some other things, but I feel like this is the one where I really get why people really liked him.
I think also I came to Dev Anand very late because he wasn't someone that I was even remotely interested in. And I was just this person that watched movies that just happened to be on TV or that anyone in my family was watching. I just like watch a bit. So a lot of the movies that I saw of his were his much later works, like Hirapana and what is that movie with Zeenat Aman, the famous one, Dammaro Dam, stuff like that. So at that point, he was already not so much in Dammaro Dam, but like in movies like Hirapana, he was firmly starting to get into dirty old man territory where I was just like, this is creepy. Can you not? And the age gaps between him and his heroines were starting to become like Akshay Kumar's age gaps today. So after having that very unpalatable opinion of Dev Anand to then watch some of his black and white movies, like he's wonderful in Hum Dono.
Yeah.
But if you've seen him in Hirapana before that, then you're not gonna like him in Hum Dono as much. So it's just kind of like poisoned a little bit. But yeah, I mean, I guess he was charming in his black and white films if you can watch those. But in the color, he was kind of like me.
His mannerisms are much in the black and white films. I think he's actually trying to do different characters and stuff. And I have to say, like, I kind of admire him for like the whole Anand, all their films and everything are pretty.
Yes,
I like the fact that he refused, as I understand it, to bow to age pressure in a way, right? Because you're like, you know what? You're an actor, you want to act, good for you. But yeah, it's still kind of gross. And then when you hear all the stories about him, off screen, and they're like, I haven't read his autobiography, but I feel like I should. Years ago, there was some amazing story about him going around on Twitter. Someone went to narrate a script to him, and it was just bizarre and hilarious. And I was laughing about this over breakfast, and my mom was saying, what are you reading? And I'm like, how do you explain Dev Anand to someone who's seen like 3 hits?
I know.
Like, there is he's just his own thing, and I kind of admire that. Kind of.
It's my husband kind of watched a little bit of Dev Anand, and then he basically was like, oh, Elvis Light. And I was like, why do you say Elvis Light? And he was like, you almost feel like he watched a few Elvis Presley videos, and he was like, ooh, I want to do this like cool stuff that he does. And then he almost sort of like started doing that, but it's nothing like him. And I was like, oh, that's terrible.
So Waheeda, yeah.
Yes. Exactly. We got distracted. I fear this is going to happen in all of our like legacy movie stars episodes. So Waheeda's role in Guide is amazing. Well, first of all, the book that the movie is based on is so superb. So for those of you who don't know, you really should read the book. It's not that big. It's really nice. She basically plays the daughter of a courtesan who marries an archaeologist for respect in society, but he is very mean to her and kind of like abusive. And when they are in Rajasthan, because he's on an archaeological dig of some sort, she basically falls in love with Raju Guide, who is played by Dev Anand. And then the whole movie just takes a very interesting metaphysical turn towards the end and ceases to be just a love story, and it's more like a redemption story, and it's really good. And her role is so meaty because she plays this extremely frustrated woman. It was so weird. It reminded me a little bit of the Charulata character from Satyajit Ray's movie, but in a weird way. So there's these parallels, right? Where Charulata is this spoiled, beautiful, rich Bengali woman who's married to a zamindar. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have children. She basically has nothing to do all day. And so she's just walking around with those little glasses of hers, and she's kind of like a bird in a golden cage. And that's kind of what Waheeda is as well, except because Waheeda's husband is abusive, and because she's very ambitious and she wants to, make a name for herself as a dancer, there's all these horrible power struggles happening between them and all this fighting. And so her character is very feisty, where it seems like Charlotte has kind of like given up, and there's all this ennui and inertia in that movie. In here, she kind of like refuses to take no for an answer. And so she has some really like explosive scenes with the guy who plays her husband. He's done a really good job too. He is so annoying, like you just want to punch him in the face. But that's because his character is so horrible. But he has acted really well, actually. And there's all these scenes. And the best part about that movie is it's still so relevant because, for example, the archaeologist doesn't want her to dance anymore because he doesn't think it's respectable. But she was good enough for him to marry. It's just she can't forge her own path. And I feel like that still happens to such a large extent today, where women will get married and then their husbands or their in-laws or whoever will be like, oh, but I don't want you to work. I want you to be a stay-at-home mom. And you're expected to stifle sort of your ambitions and what that does. So a lot of those things are still relevant today. But her performance is phenomenal. Her dances are so good. The entire soundtrack is amazing. She is fearless in this movie, and it's considered Waheeda Rehman's career best performance, and you can see why. And not that Dev Anand is bad, he isn't. The problem is he's not Waheeda. She's just in a league of her own. He just can't match up to her. He does a better job towards the end of the movie, though.
Is there someone else?
You've seen Guys, right?
I have. I don't remember it terribly well, except for some of the songs.
Yes.
Who would you have cast instead?
Instead of Dev Anand? That's a hard question because I genuinely like Dilip Kumar. I like the work he did, but Raju Gai's character is meant to be kind of frivolous and silly and funny and flirtatious, and I'm not sure Dilip Kumar can do that.
Yeah,
I love Dilip Kumar. Yeah, I love him because he's like serious and earnest and things like that. But the few times that Dilip Kumar has tried to be funny and silly and flirtatious, for example, in Ram or Sham, it's not landed very well. But I feel like, I mean, he's a good enough actor that I think maybe he could have done it. But you need someone who has that combination of being like a really good actor, but also kind of light persona wise, I don't know who fits the bill.
He's mid-60s, and I feel like, so I'm not saying this would have likely happened. I feel like Shashi Kapoor could have done it, frankly, because he can be light. I also feel like Dharmendra could have done it. Don't you think?
Dharmendra is an interesting choice. I think Shashi Kapoor could definitely have done it, especially because I'm thinking about his role in the movie Jab Jab Phool Khile, and especially the drunken scene in that. So that's a great combination of light and serious. Dharmendra, I don't know. Do we feel like he's a good actor though? Very charming, extremely handsome.
I feel like, I mean, a lot of people have said this, that he is obviously he has these early films that are much more women-centered, the films are, and he's kind of
like Satyakam,
a little more supporting. So I feel like maybe he could have brought that, and he can be incredibly light and funny. Maybe it's not his. I think of him as 70s Dharmendra, so I have to remind myself of these other things that he's done, and I haven't seen as many of those, but I don't know. I feel like my answer to everything is put Dharmendra in it, but.
That's like me. My answer to everything is put Sunny Deol in
it. This has turned into the Deol family, love fest.
Yes. But the funny thing is that we always associate Waheeda Rehman with Guru Dutt, right? Now that is one person who could never have played anyone even remotely light. Everything was somber and dark and emo and almost gothic in his movies. I actually, as part of research for this episode, I considered revisiting Kagaz Ke Phool and Pyasa, and then I was like, no, I'm tired. I have a job. I don't know if I can put myself through that. Like, I love this podcast, but I don't know if I'm willing to sacrifice a few hours to Pyasa and Kagaz Ke Phool. So I was like, no, Guide is gonna have to do.
It's a bit much. I mean, we've seen them; they're wonderful. I will visit, especially I mean, at some point, but the trials.
I like how you're not knocking down a date, though.
Sorry.
I like how you're not locking down a date, though.
No,
sure, like at some point, maybe.
It would take someone saying, like, will you come on my podcast to talk about this? Like, I would prep for it, or if I was like writing something about it. But it's, I mean, I know they're great. I don't have.
I know.
Things that are great,
but see, that's one of the things about. Well, that's one of the things about Guide. Like, Guide is considered one of the best Hindi films of all time, but it is actually still eminently watchable. It doesn't feel dated to me at all. The only things that feel dated about it are some of the cinematography is very hectic, and some of the art direction is a little bit questionable. And of course, Dev Anand's affectations are annoying as always, but it's actually a very relevant movie even today. And if you were to remake or recast Guide today, I can't think of anyone who would be able to do Waheeda's role. I literally cannot. I mean, I feel like Vidya Balan would have had the chops, but Vidya Balan is not that good a dancer. So who is there? No one can do it. What did you think about Kohraa? That one is based on a book, right?
Yeah, so that's a remake of Rebecca.
Yeah.
Which I have not read, but I did watch the Hitchcock version right after watching Kohraa. It makes several differences from Hitchcock's film, and I understand from the book, from what I have read. It's, so they had done Beast Salbad a couple years prior. I'm sure that's why they cast Biswajit in this too, like hoping to recapture how popular that movie was. He's just a dud. Like, there's nothing, I feel like the wardrobe and makeup department was mad at him because or the makeup department in particular, like they really slather on the like white face basically on him.
But that's Biswajit in every movie. Biswajit and Joy Mukherjee, they always gave them the brightest of pink lipsticks and made them really weird looking. Like, have you seen Joy Mukherjee in Love in Tokyo? Oh my God, he wears more makeup than Mala Sinha. So I think that may be a Biswajit thing than a makeup department thing.
And I have seen him in at least one of his kind of 60s Bengali films, which are better. I don't hate him automatically, and I think he's pretty, but I just don't think he's a very good actor. So, and he is certainly no Laurence Olivier, poor man, like who is, but anyway, Kohraa is great. It adds a supernatural injection to Rebecca, which is interesting. And of course you have Lalita Pawar as Mrs. Danvers, and she is,
so good. She steals the scene.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it very much. I've got a piece coming out in a couple weeks on a friend's website about it, which I can link to once it's up. But it's definitely a great watch. It's very atmospheric. They start with a flashback showing what happened sort of to the first Mrs. De Winter.
Okay.
So you kind of see things, but you don't know what you're seeing. And then they keep that up throughout the rest of the movie. And you still don't really know until the very end what happened. And I thought that was very effective. Like, I actually had to pause. I'm like, wait, what's happening? Which is cool to have a mystery that's really quite mysterious. I think that Kohraa is much more about Waheeda's character and her kind of unraveling and her sense of self that she can never claim, and what people are doing to her than
all the gaslighting
is. So I really recommend it. She's phenomenal. Her range is everything. There's lovely songs. It's very strong. I highly recommend it. And then CID is different vibes, a much better scene partner for her in Dev Anand, but she's she's playing this kind of coy, a little bit reserved in a way, but also forward enough to like reach out to the police to inform on her gangster boyfriend, which is cool. Phool. And there's a great scene of her and Dev Anand are being chased through the like
Mhm.
villain's lair kind of deal, and it's cool, like shadows and suspense and that kind of stuff. Very,
Oh yeah.
Nav Ketan kind of vibe, even though it's not. I don't think they produced it; they didn't direct it. So I would highly recommend both of those films. And in terms of like what she specifically brings that maybe that would have made her unique in CID, I don't think there's really anything particularly unique about her performance, but it is strong.
Mhm.
And she made more of an impact than the woman who plays his girlfriend, frankly, Shakila, who was fine, but like
Oh
Waheeda Rehman. But by the time in Kohraa, 8 years later, like she is just superb.
wow.
So I would highly recommend it.
Okay. One of the interesting things I saw about Guide was, so you know how Yash Chopra used to do this thing where in many of his movies, like in I would say in Chandni, maybe Lamhe, Dil To Pagal Hai, he did this thing where he would have this musical instrumental kind of a thing, and then his leading lady would have a dance on it. Like in Dil To Pagal, he had the dance of envy, and then in so I feel like that actually started with the Anands, because in Guide, that's where you have the dance where Waheeda Rahman has been so like suffocated for so long, and she asks Raju Guide if yeah, and then she has that like snake charmer dance over there, and you're like, oh Jesus, and then she faints at the end of it. That dance is spectacular. It is so good. Like it's just like a master class in acting, just her expressions in that song. And then I remembered that there's another Navketan film, which is Jewel Thief, in which Vaijanti Mala has that big dance number, Hoto Pe Aisi Baat. So I wonder if the Chopras basically like lifted that from the Anands, where they were like, we'll do this like instrumental number. Not that Hoto Pe Aisi Baat is instrumental, but where they were like, let's just give our leading lady this like one great opportunity to emote through music. But I thought that was pretty interesting. Also, I have a really cool Waheeda Rehman anecdote to share. This did not happen to me. This happened to my friend Abbas. So my friend Abbas Saleh Mohammed grew up in Mumbai, and he lived in Churchgate. And every Christmas, the kids in his building, they would go up on the terrace and they would have like a Christmas party. And they would have like, I think a costume party where someone would dress as Santa, someone would be elves and stuff like that. Of course, in like 80-degree weather in December in Mumbai, but they did this. And then they would have like presents and stuff like that. And one year, his friends and him were doing this. They were like little kids, and they all went up to the terrace. And you know who was there to judge the costume contest and give prizes? Waheeda! So she was the aunt of one of his like kitty neighbors. She was like related to that family, and she was going to be visiting them that day. And the little boy said to her that we're going to have a costume contest and like a little kitty Christmas party up on the terrace. Do you want to join us? And she was like, okay. And the best part is Abbas and all of his friends, because they were little, they had no idea who this woman was. Like to them, she was just their friends, like auntie or whatever. So he said basically like I got like to hang out with Waheeda Rehman and just chill out with her for a few hours, and had no idea who she was. And then I grew up and watched her movies, and I was like, holy shit. But see, these things never happened to me. I meet Rahul Bose at like Mumbai airport baggage claim. That is the extent of cool things that happened to me. But yeah, this is like a really fun anecdote. Imagine being at like a party, and at the icebreaker, you're like, well, there was that one time that Waheeda Rehman gave me a present for like my fancy dress Christmas competition. People are like, what?
You know, when you have to do an icebreaker for a work event and it's like, tell two truths and a lie, like, or two lies and a
Yeah.
that's your truth. And people will be like, nah. I love that she has these films in her much later years, like more contemporary to us now, where she's also still amazing. Like she's great in Delhi 6. She's great
Yes.
in Basanti and 15 Park Avenue. And she's just really great all the time. I also love that you always see these pictures of her hanging out with the other women, some of the other women from her era. Like she's hanging around with Sadhana and Helen, and like that's a cool
So
place
they're
to want to
actually
go.
close friends. Yeah, they're actually close friends. And I
Love
think
that.
all four of them are like widows at this point, and one of them was never married. And they travel together. And so I'd seen
Nanda's
some
the other
pictures
one.
last
Yeah.
year. Who?
Nanda.
Yes, Nanda. Oh, but Nanda passed away, unfortunately. But they were like really close friends and they would hang out together and they traveled together. And I saw pictures last year of her in like Banaras. Her daughter was taking pictures. And apparently, Waheeda has now developed a great interest in photography. So she was like taking pictures and everything. Yeah, she had like a big old like Canon. And I think she'd gone to Andaman and Nicobar Islands or something like that with her girlfriends who were like all these like yesteryear movie stars. So she seems very much like this like affable, lovely person that everyone gets along with. But I watched an interview of hers a long time ago, and it was very interesting. She is very affable and amiable and lovely, but she was also someone who really stood up for herself. So, you know, how back in like the 50s and 60s, all of the Muslim stars were expected to change their names and make their names Hindu. Like, you know, there's Dilip Kumar, Meena Kumari, Madhubala, all of them have fake like stage names. I think Nargis was actually the only one who didn't. So she kind of like stood out for having a Muslim name. And apparently Waheeda Rehman, when she was like kind of like a newbie, because I think her first film she ever did was actually a Telugu movie because she's from Hyderabad. And so I think right before she got into Bollywood or before she was doing her Telugu movie, something to that effect, the producer asked her to change her name because it was like a name like Waheeda Rehman, you're never going to become a star. We need to like rename you. And she was like, nope, not going to do it. She was like, if you're going to change my name, I'm not going to do the movie. So that was like pretty cool, I thought. And she talked about it in an interview. The other thing was that she was a little bit conservative with the way she dressed, and she never wore sleeveless outfits. So whether she wore a sari or salwar kameez or dress or whatever, it always had to have sleeves. Even her dance costumes always had like the flesh colored mesh on it. And she told a story in the interview about she was shooting with the Anand brothers, with whom she had a great like friendship, and they were on location somewhere. I wonder if it was about Guide. I'm not sure. And the costume department person brought her outfit to her, and they were like, "Okay, well, this is what you're wearing." She takes one look at it and she says, "No, I'm not." And they were like, "What do you mean?" So she goes, "This sari blouse is sleeveless. I don't wear sleeveless. It's in my contract." So they were like, "But this is what we have." And she was like, "Yeah, well, I'm not going to shoot then." So the tailor had to go back, find extra material, and quickly stitch on sleeves for the sari blouse because she absolutely refused to shoot. And at some point, I believe the producer or the director even came out and said something to the effect of, "Why are you making such a fuss?" And she was like, "I'm not making a fuss. It's in my contract. I don't wear sleeveless dresses. You can like fix it or say goodbye to shooting today." So they fixed it and then she shot. So it's like these little things about her that endear her to me, because we still live in a world, it's 2022, where I know women, I have friends, I have acquaintances, especially girls who are younger, who don't know how to speak up for themselves, and they just kind of like acquiesce and go along because they don't want to be seen as difficult. I love that Waheeda had no problem seeming difficult. She wasn't a diva, but she was like, "You want to think I'm a diva? Go right ahead. I'm fine with it." So it's just little things like that that make me love her so much.
And the fact that, you know, clothing is adjacent to your personhood. So this is not like
Mm-hmm.
only green M&Ms in my hotel room. This is like my personhood and my identity that I show to the world.
Yeah.
So just put some sleeves on it. It's not hard.
Yeah.
That's great.
That's really cool though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um,
What do you think makes her special, especially compared to some of the other women that we'll be talking about, or some of her contemporaries? Like, what is her, secret sauce that makes her someone that we've decided to talk about today?
I think she was the trifecta of talent, because to become a really huge Bollywood megastar, you need basically three things. You need to be a really good actress, like you have to have the acting chops, but you also need to be extremely beautiful, like conventionally beautiful, and you also need to be a phenomenal dancer. All of the top heroines in the past and later, whether it's Sri Devi or Madhuri Dixit or whatever, have had all three. And Waheeda was one of the few people in the beginning who did. Nargis, for example, love her to bits, terrible dancer and not really considered conventionally beautiful. I think she's very beautiful, but she's more like that Catherine Hepburn-esque, where they would say that the person was handsome as opposed to beautiful. Striking, yeah. Or if you look at Meena Kumari, couldn't really dance. Madhubala couldn't dance at all. So and with Madhubala, even with her acting, it's like she doesn't have a lot of range either. Waheeda is one of the few people in the beginning that have what the later actresses like Rekha and Sridevi and Madhuri had, where it was just the triple threat. She could act, she could dance, she was extremely beautiful, and who else has that in her era even?
To me,
So
she
I
also
also
an
oh,
elegance.
go ahead.
There's just an elegance about her, and I wish I could figure out what I mean more by that, and that I'm aware by using words like that there's classist overtones to what I'm saying and things like that, but I'm trying to kind of pick that apart. But I do think
I
she
think she was regal.
yeah, and like a sophistication, maybe something
Yeah.
like, and part of that's going to be the roles that she was offered and chose, right? Because that is, we can't take a performer apart fully out from their roles. So not everybody gets.
But what's interesting though is that because she was such a good dancer, there's a lot of roles that she's done where she basically played like a courtesan or played like a dancing girl or like a prostitute or stuff like that. But even in those roles, there was a nobility that she brought to it. Like in Tisri Kasam, she's a dancer, and I think she just had this sort of like inner nobility, for lack of a better word, that it didn't really matter what role you gave her. She never came across as crass or annoying. I think that she just kind of endowed her characters with her own inner sophistication and nobility. I don't think you had to separate the real from the real image in, say, stark contrast to someone like Ranveer Singh. I love Ranveer Singh when he's acting, but Ranveer Singh off screen makes me want to pull my hair out. Like just his antics are so annoying. It's like, lay off the drugs, man. Like, just enough with the speed. But when he's like being understated in like Lutera, I adore him in Lutera, but then I see his antics and I'm like, no, go away. I don't think you have to do that with Waheeda. You love her on screen, you love her off screen, you love her anecdotes. She's amazing.
Yeah, I certainly love her. What would you recommend that? So I've seen, I'm going to say 10 or 12 of her movies. What are some of your other favorites in addition to Guide that everyone should watch if they haven't?
I really like her in Chaudhary Ka Chand. Having said that, it's a little bit of a weepy. It's what used to be known as a Muslim social, where there would be all this like decorum and stuff like that. I don't really like those movies that much. Like, that entire subgenre is not that appealing to me. But I mean, she's gorgeous in that movie, and she's really like amazing. I would say the Gurudat movies, Kagaaz Ke Phool and Pyaasa. Maybe just watch them once. If you like them that much, you can watch them a second time, but it's a little unpalatable after a point. I also like her in some of her later films. Like, I thought her role in Lamhe was so good. I mean, it was little, but she had such a big impact as the Daija. She was really great in it.
I really like her in Sahi Bibi or Gulam, which is not a film that I will probably rewatch anytime soon again.
Yeah.
And I think we have to mention that she is in one of Ray's films. She's in Abidjan with Sumitra Chatterjee, my very, very favorite. And they are really good together. It's lovely to see her there too.
Okay. Sai Bibi Aur Gulam has that song, right? Bhavra Bada Nadan Hai. She's so cute in that.
I think that's that one, yeah.
Yeah, that was really cute. Yeah, but I mean, she is just a phenomenal actress. Watch these movies for her. You may or may not like her co-stars. I understand that Gurudat was this like great genius, but there's only so much of Gurudat that I personally can take. What?
I just like great artist, tortured artist narrative when it's a dude who's an alcoholic and everything, and you're like, I am sorry for him that he had alcoholism, that there was not treatment that seemed to work for him or that he could access.
Yeah.
That does suck. He did die very young and it is sad, but also like as a narrative, fictionally, real bored of that.
Yeah. I think Pyasa was actually the movie that really drove him to the brink because he expected it to do well and it completely bombed. And I think it's one of the films that sort of hastened his demise, which is why bringing me to our Brahmastra episode. Not that I'm saying that Brahmastra is anything close to Pyasa, but I'm just saying, like, you know, can you imagine like people throwing like tomatoes and eggs at me for even bringing up that comparison? No, what I mean is like, we've all heard these like cautionary tales of people who had this like passion project and they thought it was going to change the world, and then people didn't like it, and then they got depressed. And I was like, let that not happen to Ayan Mukherjee.
I don't want that to happen to anyone.
I don't want that to happen to anyone. I know. But like I always think of Pyasa as the movie that drove Gurudhat to the absolute brink. So
let me ask one maybe final question to you, since you are more knowledgeable. Is there a type of role?
Am I? I don't think I am, but go ahead.
Is there a role or a type of film that she didn't do that you wish she had gotten to do?
I don't think so.
And that's right, when you can look back at a star who's not really acting much anymore, and you can say that, they got to do all the things that artistically made sense for them to do, like that. That's very satisfying.
She did romantic movies.
Yeah.
She did movies where she had a lot of substance, and she had these like morally great characters. I mean, she's basically in Guide, she's living in sin, to use a very archaic term, with Dev Anand. It's a very like iconoclastic movie. She's done a lot of roles like that. She's done roles where she played like streetwalkers and courtesans and gangsters malls and stuff like that. She's done supernaturally suspensey stuff. And then with time, she even started playing like the grandma or, the older aunt and stuff like that. The only movie that I feel like that just makes me irrationally angry for her is Kabhi Kabhi, because Amitabh is such a cad to her. How dare he? He's so mean to her, and I hate seeing her cry in that film just because she had like Neetu Singh out of wedlock. And I do like her performance in it, though. Like, I feel so bad for Neetu Singh when she goes and she expects to be welcomed with open arms by her mom. And her mom is like, yeah, no, I'm going to pretend you're my niece. And I do get angry on Neetu Singh's behalf for her. But I also understand why Waheeda does what she does in that movie. But Amitabh's treatment of her in that movie just makes me very angry, because I'm like, don't you dare do that to our Waheeda. How dare you? She is a goddess. You should worship her as such. So that's probably the only movie that I'm just like, makes me grumpy. Also, Wahida's role in Trishul, same thing.
Right. I thought that's what you were going to say, was Trishul.
It just makes me fume. I do not want to watch her in any movie where she is basically being mistreated by these men. It makes me want to go Mother India, when I want to like just shoot them, because I'm like, do not.
That's fair.
Yeah. What about you?
I don't think I know her filmography quite well enough to identify any absences, but I certainly have been positive, at the least, to full on blown away by her in everything that I've seen her in. And that's pretty fantastic. It does seem like in the 70s, people maybe didn't quite know what to do with her. Like, where do we slot her? And she's playing the mother of people she's not allowed to be the mother to. Classic. So I'm glad that she kept at it, and people kept thinking about her to include her in things as she aged, and she's great.
The 70s are just one of those decades. I know you love the 70s, but I don't really like the 70s at all, mostly because all the heroines in that era just sort of like underwhelmed me. I do like Sharmila Tagore very much, and I do think of her as a 70s heroine, and Rekha as well. But overall, I feel like the movies were all written for the men, and you had Amitabh Bachchan just looming over everyone.
That is true. I think they were written for the men for the most part. Yeah.
Like, there's so many, like the question you asked me about Waheeda, like, do we feel like she was underutilized anyway? No, I don't think so at all. But I do think that Zeenat Aman was underutilized. Parveen Babi was underutilized. A lot of those 70s heroines basically got shafted just because they entered the movies during that era, because there just weren't enough roles written for them, and everything was just hogged by the men, with Sharmila being the notable exception.
That's fair.
So, okay. So do we know what our next episode is going to be, or
I
are we
don't think
not
we
sure?
do. I don't think we do know.
Okay, no worries. I guess they will find out, our viewers will find out exactly when we do. So that's awesome. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel, guys. If you have any requests, like if you want us to do certain topics or subjects, just let us know. You can contact us on Twitter, on Instagram, on email, on YouTube. There's lots of ways to contact us, basically. You can send us smoke signals. But thank you for watching Filmi Ladies, and we will see you next time. Bye.